Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to another episode of the Indie Hour. It's episode 48. Oh my god, we're almost at 50. That means it's funny because we should make it to 52, but I think we've missed a week, or maybe we started the new year basically, and that means that we've done 52 weeks, 52 more than 52 by the end of this year individual games. And we missed like maybe a week or two there, which would put it, if we hit 50, we should hit 50. It's the third. We have 4 more weeks in the month. We should hit 52. That's a crazy amount of indie games covered for 1 year. For the first year of doing the Indie Hour, and the Indie Hour will turn 2 in the first week of January. So I'm actually pretty excited about this. This was a really successful series, mostly just from like the uplift. A lot of creators got a lot of help this year, and I'm really happy about how it went. And we have a wonderful little like thematic, I would say diorama style miniature game that the patrons have picked this week called Omen. I'm excited to show you guys this one because it does a lot with some pretty simple premises. Like, for instance, it's diceless. It uses a deck of standard playing cards for all of its RNG, so it's random number generation, as well as mechanically in the gimmick of the name in the omens, and as your measuring device. So you pull one of the jokers out of the deck, and this is your movement gauge. So you don't need any movement widgets, which means that there's not a lot of stuff intruding on the table, which I really like. You have short and long movement. It plays on a 16 by 16 inch board. And this is one of those sort of like hashtag 28 grimdark style games. So if you want sort of a Cole's Notes of what the premise is, this massive sort of unnamed leviathan washes up on a nameless shore. This is set somewhere, I would say, like it's pre-Black Powder, so like in between the medieval and Renaissance periods, really, like before firearms. And this huge carcass of like unimaginable size. It's indescribably big. Insert Lovecraftian adjectives until you've managed to decide it. It drives everyone nearby mad, and the local region descends into kind of like folk cult madness. And so you represent one of these cults and the acolytes. It has a full campaign system. It's fleshed out in that regard, and a full like injury system for tracking damage in between games. And it's sort of a kit bash game, but you've got a bunch of different factions to pick from. The factions can all be adjusted kind of to your liking. Like you pick a dogma for your sect inside the faction, and they compete against each other in like this weird folk horror fun sort of style game. So let's check it out. It is available if you guys want to check it out for free on Paul's Patreon. And Paul Boracchi, the designer of this game, is basically just giving it away as a Discord for sharing all your photos of what you've done too. And is just seemingly excited about you guys trying it out. So you guys can check it out. It'll be linked in the video description. But let's have a look at his beta 0.6 rulebook. Which again, you can just download for free. It's on his website, or on his Patreon rather. So basic stuff in here. He's collaborated with a wonderful artist. It's on all this visual art. And he's got tons of fun, background text in here too. So he really goes really far into like giving you this world, and telling you as much about it to inspire you to build your miniatures the way that you want them. And the layout for a beta free rulebook is really well done. Press a shell to your ear. Do you hear it? The voice of the deep. We've got some Dagon-y stuff happening in this game. And it comes in a trim just under 48 pages. So 24 pages, which means you could definitely zine bind this if they actually, wanted to put it in print. All right. So what is Omentide and the Revelation? The revelation is the stuff coming up from underwater. I'm not going to spend too much time reading. I'm not going to read out loud to you guys, but the idea here is that the dawn was gray, cloaked in a heavy mist, when the fishermen found the thing. It sprawled across the desolate shore, an obscene violation of earthly proportions. The writing in here is extremely Lovecraftian. I love it. No man among them could name its kind, for its form defied all reason. A glistening, many-limbed mass of scales, chitin, and rotting flesh, its appendages nearly fully tentacle nor fully claw. The air was thick around it, filled with the stench of decay, salt, and something indescribable. So we've got our, cosmic horror stuff kind of like digging in here. Cults blow up around it. A bunch of people decide it's a god. And we get this. We get weirdos fighting in the deep. They start to mutate. Things start to change. Obviously, everything goes horribly wrong. And I love the art style here because it's kind of a mix of like Dagon-y Lovecraft bad guys, and it's a little like what would happen. It's cordycepsy, you know what I mean? It's a little Last of Us with like all the weird kind of variations of how things are growing together. Life on the coast. Life on Lebe Daria was harsh. The name belonged to a forsaken speck of earth and rock cast into the vast, uncaring ocean. Most of the island was covered in gnarled and sinister forest, a labyrinth of twisted roots and blackened branches. So you get an idea. This is it's a lost island, sort of. The wild nature of the woods left no room for crops to grow. Down's people had long ago accepted that any attempt to clear the twisted trees would reclaim even a small patch of fertile soil ended in failure and despair. Instead, they clung to the bleak windswept coast, their villages pressed against the land like barnacles on a whale. Fishing on frail wooden boats, preying became their only occupation. Their home was weathered by centuries of salt and storm, stood crooked and sagging, their wood blackened with age, slanted rooftops dripping with eternal damp and dim windows. You get the idea here. This is an Innsmouth, an even worse Innsmouth, like a pre-colonial times Innsmouth. Bloodlines in Lebe Daria were as old and tangled as the kelp forest that covered the seafloor. Faces bore the pallor of those who lived too long in the mountain's shadow, their dark eyes hooded and wary. Generations of toil had made them slow and deliberate, their bodies thick with the weight of labor and unrelenting damp. The complete lack of contact with the outside world made them superstitious and crude. It was perhaps inevitable that the arrival of the leviathan would sow seeds of zealotry, violence, and madness in their minds. So, the world of Omentide. And there's some wonderful photography in here, too, of, like, the kit bashed miniatures, where literally seashells have been used on, like, model bits to make these weirdo, monster-y fishmen. So choose your sack, raise your blade, sing your hymn, and may the sea remember your name. Evil cults inside Omentide. The setting in short, on a remote island, a colossal corpse, a true leviathan, is found and dead on the beach. The locals worship it and eventually descend into madness and religious civil wars as they discover the gods of the depths. Also, pretty shells. Medieval pre-gunpowder setting, Lovecraftian madness, religious fanaticism, and crab themes, and then you kit bash your minis with shells. Gameplay in short, using common playing cards for combat and measuring, as we talked about earlier. In combat, both players choose a card and reveal it at the same time. The highest wins, with some exceptions. It's not just war. And every round, a new suit of cards is appointed as the Omen. That suit's now stronger than all the others, so use your cards broadly. So you're going to have a 5-card deck at any given time, and the Omen is the suit that is trumping everything else. So even if you play a card that is lower, it will win the fight or whatever you're trying to do. What do you need? 2 players, 3 models. You want to kit bash them into something cool. A deck of playing cards with 1 joker removed that you use for measuring. Some tokens to mark down who's activated, but use shells. And then a game board 16 by 16 inch in size. If you plan on playing non-standard size cards, you might want to use bigger or shorter tables. Some terrain like rocky formations, statues, and other obstacles, and a maddening desire to become one with the deep. This is, however, optional. Again, I like the whimsy that this has in it. You can see the 28 Blanche kind of influence here with all little illustrations in the margins and the layout of the book. Setting up the game. Okay, I have said this before in Indie Hour episodes. Do a diagram. That play area diagram is perfect. Paul, this is exactly what you want to illustrate how to play in a nutshell. Your board, your discard power, your deck, your omen zone, and then damage zones for your 3 heroes, and then you both have hands of cards. Absolutely perfect. No notes. Every other indie game designer you see them in 40K books since the beginning of time. It's literally just a game laid out and photographed. Indie designers, you can't do that. You actually probably could, but if you can't, this little like diagram right here is absolutely perfect. And what's great about this is, of course, this is echoing back the ones in Mordheim. Mordheim used this type of drawing for all their deployment zones, for all their mission packs. And this is clearly supposed to be evocative of that, but like from a design point of view, amazing way to get your reader to understand intrinsically what the game's going to look like set up on the table. Choose player colors. You have red and black because that's obviously the 2 colors, the 2 suits. This is just going to differentiate who's player A and player B for most of the game, and some effects will say red player, black player, whatever. Set up terrain, the board and objectives according to the scenario, which will come later on. There's a bunch of scenarios in this thing, and then set up the different card zones, which you see in the diagram. I already described all of them. So you get your deck, your discard pile, and the Omen zone. The Omen zone is also your turn counter because you flip a card to be your Omen for the turn. That suit's going to be the Omen. And then you flip a number of cards. And once the number of cards hits the Omen zone, that's your round limit. And then you got slots. So for instance, when you take damage cards, they also are like your status effects. So different suits have different status effects for your characters. That's why you leave them face up. And then when you have a number of cards in your damage track equal to your damage value for your character, they die. Damage done for the models, and then round overview. So first the Omen phase, reveal an Omen card. If it's the Joker, shuffle it back into the discard pile, and the Joker back into the deck. It's a trump card, so you want to make sure that is always in there. And then choose the Oracle. The player of the same color as the revealed card is now the Oracle. They decide who goes first, and who will have special abilities during the round. The Oracle will also decide in which order to resolve effects that happen at the same time. So simultaneous things, you basically have like a way of like differentiating who's right and who's wrong, or what order they go in. And then draw phase, discard as many cards from your hand as you want, drop to the total of 5, and then the Oracle decides if you're going to be either Faith or Fury. Fury is going to go first, but give the other person additional card draw for their hand, and then Faith is going to go second, but they get 6 cards in their hand as opposed to 5. And then the tide turns. At the end of the draw phase, if the player has fewer models on the table, they get a favor token. A player who has a favor token can spend it to get a free activation. So one of their models that's already activated can go again. So basically, all this means is you're going to have a number of activations equal to your opponent. This free activation does not cause the model to assign an activation token. So basically, they're single use. The token's not used at the end of the round. It's discarded and lost. And what that means is you can keep activating people that don't have an activation token, and you can use a favor token to basically double activate somebody and not give them an activation token at the end of the turn. It means that there's no activation economy imbalance in the game when you start losing guys. It's just a clever little way of doing it, and it mechanically works really simply by not giving you an activated token. And then your 3 main phases, players alternate activating one of their models until both players can't activate. And you take 2 actions. You have move. Your actual guy will, your model will say if he moves short or long based upon his stats and his class. You can climb. A model in base contact with terrain can do a long height climb, and you place the model at the top. You can dash. This is an additional action because you only do each action once. So you can move your move, and then a dash is always a short move no matter what your stat is. So you're going to measure along the short edge. So a short move is that edge, a long move is that edge. Again, clever use of the cards. Attacks, you can make an attack, which we'll talk about in a minute. Special actions, some characters might have them. Dodge, place the top card of the deck face down next to the model. You may look at it. The dodge card can be used in place of a defend from your hand. If this isn't used, discard at the end of the round. So when you dodge, you basically get to draw from the top of the deck, put it down, and that character is always going to be able to play that to defend, because normally you can choose not to, and that means you can save cards in your hand. So you're spending actions to gain additional cards. And then interact, claim objectives and stuff like that. Use items, something you're carrying, and then idle, just do nothing. And then you get an activated token once you've got one, like a seashell. It means you can't activate again until next round. That's why the free tokens don't create them. And scoring phase, remove all your activated tokens, and then score points according to the scenario. And then, of course, once you have a certain amount, then you're gone. The spiral. The thing on the shore was beyond size, beyond reason. Its body a cathedral of flesh and bones split open by the tide. The great spiral shell rose from its hunched back, ridged and towering, twisting itself into an impossible mass of bone and calcified ruin. The longer one stared, the higher it seemed to climb, as if it was reaching for the sky. So, obviously, they become obsessed with spirals. And then we have all these different places, the different shows. So there's the Gullet Steps, the Hungry Lighthouse, the St. Basin's Rib, the Chapel of Iron Silence. These are all just different places and different cults will grow up around them. So I love that little bit of like depth. And then the in-depth rules. So how to move, right? And your stances, long movement, base contact, short movement, just as I described earlier. Vertical movement, how you climb. And again, diagrams, like with photos, very handy. Special terrain, so like dangerous terrain, for instance. With dangerous terrain, if it's dangerous, if you end within a short move of it, you make an incidental damage test. Those are really simple. You just flip the top card of the deck. If it is your color, you're safe. If it is not your color, that's why you have a red and black player. That's the randomizing thing. You take damage and you put that card that you just flipped into their damage track. So it just means like you can slip and fall, stuff can stab you, it can be dangerous. And then dangerous waters, at the end of a movement phase, any model in water must make an incidental damage test because there's weird critters in the water. And you're always moving short. Models that are deployed in a water feature at the start of a game ignore the dangerous waters rule for the first round because you've basically safely deployed yourself there. All right, the combat attack sequence. So again, short description is it's war. You're both going to play a card. You're going to have 5 cards in your deck. And you can choose to defend or not. So if someone attacks you, you can just not defend. And whatever card they put down, just put it in your damage track. So you can, if you don't have any cards left, that's just your default option. Otherwise, you both put a card face down from your hand and you reveal it simultaneously. The highest card wins, but if someone plays a card from the Omen suit that turns current suit, you're always going to probably have a card in your hand that could just win a fight. And that means you'll defend successfully or hit successfully, even if it's lower than the card that you had played. If both cards are an Omen suit, then it goes back to whoever plays the highest. And then damage. If the attacker's card is equal or higher, then it's a success. It goes in the damage zone. Cards of the same suit as the same Omen are always considered to be higher value than other cards in the suit except Jokers. Joker always wins. That's why there's only one Joker in the deck, and you're going to reshuffle those cards at the end of the turn. All involved cards that were not assigned to a model are discarded. If the defender's damage zone is the same number of cards as its HP, it's defeated. Discard all the cards assigned to it and remove all the models, and its controller draws a card. And then pushback. If the defender took damage, the attacker may push it back directly away from it until the distance between the 2 models is equal to the short side of a card. Models are now considered to be within short. If a model cannot be pushed back in this way because of terrain, it makes an incidental damage test. So basically you can shove people and use the terrain to do damage to them as well. And then, this is what's cool, once a model has a court card, Jack, King, or Queen of any suit in its damage track, it gets a status. So if you have a King in your damage track of hearts, you're bleeding. If it's diamonds, you're confused. So bleeding is if the red Omen is revealed at the start of the Omen phase, this model's controller takes a damage from the bottom of the deck and places it in its damage zone. So you keep bleeding out if the Omen is going to be red. And then diamonds, you're confused. You draw 1 less card in the draw phase. Clubs, you're weakened. When the model defends, it must reveal its defender card before the attacker chooses. So you play your card face up. And then spades is crippled. You can't take dash actions, but you can still move. And then, like I said, incidental damage. There's a bunch of reasons it can happen, but it's really simple. You flip the top card of the deck, and if it matches your model's color, then you escape from danger. Otherwise, take damage in the damage zone. And we get some examples of combat. Again, just very useful to have examples in here. Some people can't internalize rules from just reading them. They need to read it like a story. I actually think that that's why people enjoy Let's Plays on GMG, is that you're seeing it happen as opposed to just trying to internalize it through reading. And it's just the different learning types that are out there. It's a visual learner. So these are some descriptions of the different cults: the Feast, the Drowned Choir, the Harbingers, the Fleshkeeper's Church, and the Barnacle Prophets. So these are basically the factions you can play in the game, and each one's going to have a set of different powers and also a different theme for you to kit bash your 3 models out of. And this is just people and the way that they're interpreting sort of superstitiously the coming of the Leviathan and what it all meant. All right, so you can build your sect. So first you pick one of the 5 factions. Then you choose a dogma. They all have 3 available. Choose 3 devotee models available to that faction. You cannot include the same one more than once. So you can never have double up on anything. And then assign an item from the item list. Everybody can have one except for guys who are Goliaths. They basically give up their item to be a little bit more powerful. And then your stats. There's going to be your move, your HP, and your base size. That's it, because everything else is done by the cards. You might have some special skills. They can give you special actions you can do. And then passive skills are things that are happening all the time. They might interact with how you play cards or how you move. And I'll go through one of these sects so you can check it out for yourselves, obviously, if you look at it, but this will kind of give us one to use it as an example here, the Barnacle Prophets. Their faces are lost between spiraled masks, shells that have fused their flesh, twisting ever outward. Barnacles creep across their skin, crusting over ribs and arms like nature's armor. Very like Pirates of the Caribbean, like the Ghost Pirates. The mark of those who have listened too long. They wander the shorelines and streets shouting and chanting sermons, their voices thick with salt and reverence. The peasants, fishermen, and midwives listen and follow, easily swayed by the powers of their voice. When the Omen speaks, so do they, preaching with the certainty of those who already know how the story ends. The spiral is truth. The spiral is fate. It is always turning. So you can choose from one of these 3 dogmas. The first one, the truth, at the start of the first main phase, secretly look back at the top 5 decks in the card and then place them back in any order. So you can basically determine what happens in the main phase, but only for the first turn. Then the eye beneath, when a friendly model takes an incidental damage tech, you can play a card from your hand instead of drawing one, so you know what's going to happen. And the voice calls for you.
When an enemy model takes an incidental damage test within short of one of your allied models, they reveal 2, and then you choose which one they get. So basically, you're able to kind of slightly see the future and alter events, and you can choose which one of your powers you have. And then we have our 6 different characters to choose from. The Tide Speaker. So he has 3. Most of these will have 3 hit points. They can all move long. And then they have a 20 to 28 mil base. Written in the Tides. When this model is activated, you can choose a card from your hand. If you do, discard the current Omen and replace it with that card. So you can change the Omen. So if you have 3 spades, you can play a spade, a low spade, into the Omen deck, and then and your black, for instance. Now your hand becomes more powerful. The Salt Seer, same core stats. Premonition. When this model is activated, secretly look up the top 3 cards of the deck and put them back in any order. The Converted Peasant. Moon Cycle. When this model is activated, draw a card and put a card from your hand on the top of the deck. So basically, you can just replay. You can jimmy the top of the deck. The Leviathan's Chosen. If the Omen is spades, they can take an extra action, 3 actions per turn. And then we have an Abomination, the Relentless Abomination. It's a 40 mil base, or 32. Tentacles. If the Omen is black, all enemy models that take a movement action within short range of the Relentless Abomination must make an incidental damage test because you're just shooting at tentacles. And then Goliath. This model may place 2 cards face down when attacking and use the one it prefers when they're revealed. The unused card goes back in your hand, but they can't ever use items. So they're very powerful in combat because they can put down 2 cards and then choose which one they want. And they have 4 hit points. They're a little more resilient. And then finally, the Pious Fisherman. This one can move long, lure in line. It's a special action. Choose an enemy model within short and reveal the first card of the deck. If it matches your player's color, you can shift that model up to short in any direction. It must end its movement in a free space, so you can manipulate enemy models. And because you can manipulate the deck too, the Pious Fisherman's really handy at getting you what you want. So we have the Church of the Flesh Keepers. We have the Feast. They're like shark people. They consume the fallen, little cannibals. The Drowned Choir. They do a chain activation sort of thing, and they ignore pushback and different incidental effects. Their whole thing is that they are... they're sort of extra resilient. The Harbingers. And then we're into our actual scenarios and stuff. And more background. All right, quick play. Each player has 3 models without any skills or factions. Don't play any dogmas, and you just pick a scenario and play. Just use 3 basic dudes. Campaign play. So in campaign play, you actually don't start with any of those 6 characters from your faction. You start with acolytes for a blank slate, and then you spend your experience basically in the game to then promote them to being those characters and earn new characters. So for a campaign, you need 2 to 8 players, a roster sheet, and 3 to 5 models for every sect. And you decide the scope of the campaign. Basically, it's a number of revelations you might run to, and whoever gets the first one, let's say 3, they win the campaign. So you choose a faction, choose a dogma, you get 3 starting acolytes. They have nothing except for a movement of movement of long and 3 hit points. And then their devotees, when an acolyte is promoted to a devotee, you get to pick one of the character classes from your roster, and then you can never have more than 1 in your faction. And then Goliaths are a subtype of devotees. To introduce a Goliath, a regular devotee needs to be promoted into a Goliath, gaining all the stats and losing the ability. So basically, you turn into a chaos spawn, right? You start as an acolyte, you then get one of those 5 classes of devotee, and then the devotee, one of them will erupt into being an abomination. And then during a game, you can field up to 3 models max. That doesn't include animal companions, so you can still have that on top of it. And you reveal after you choose them, basically before the game starts. And then your cult grows. You earn growth points. You start with 5 for free that you can spend at the beginning of the campaign. But you have 5 growth points you can spend. You get 1 for every slain acolyte, 2 for every slain devotee, 1 for every allied model that survives the battle, and 2 if you win the game. So you can earn them between rounds, then spend them. You've also got extra ones for being the underdog when you play. Some cute little roster sheets here. And what items you might have. And then upgrades. You can spend your growth points on upgrades. So 2, recruit new acolytes. You just get a freebie. 4, promote a devotee. So your warband can start with a single devotee already pushed into a the game as like their leader type. And then promote to a Goliath. A devotee for 5 can become a Goliath. You can get an item. You have to spend it on items, but they'll be on the roster for the items, what they cost. Try and create an affliction. Change your dogma for 3, and then a test of faith. Try to have a revelation. Revelations are needed to win the campaign. It's 4 to do so. Look at that cool art. Now, if you die during a game, you might become afflicted. When you get a court card, so one of like the face cards, then you get an affliction based upon what suit it is. So like the Jack of Spades, your paranoia. If this model starts an activation within short of an ally, it can only take 1 action this round. King of Hearts, unstable gait, change its move to short. If it already was, treat this as lethargic instead. So lethargic is Queen of Spades. In the first battle round, you can't dash because you're just like slow. Your legs get broke. So a variety of these different afflictions can be taken, and they can also be cured by spending growth points. If you spend 2 growth points, you may be able to do it. If you draw a card, if it's not a court card, then you're healed. Basically, you've like convalesced and gotten better. If it's still a court card, you keep your affliction. But if it's a joker, you're healed, and you might get promoted for free. So Acolytes, getting damage, if you get lucky and you pull the joker out of the deck, I mean, it's a 1 in 53% or odds of doing so. Yeah, you might get promoted for free, but it's cool if you do. And then a test of faith. If a player declares a test of faith, they pay 4 growth points to have a revelation next game. To declare a test of faith, the player must have at least 2 devotees in their roster. One of them immediately gets an affliction of their choice, and that model must participate in the next game. If the player still wins, they get a revelation. So basically, you have to take like a game, you have to win, and you have to win with a handicap. At the end of the campaign, the player that's collected the most revelations is the winner. If more than one player has the same number of revelations, then it becomes a tiebreaker game to win. We get some cool items that you can again buy. So like they'll have a point cost of how many growth points they cost to buy. So like this Dark Oil Flask. What you can do is if you usually use item, then you can basically choose a card and discard it and discard the Dark Oil Flask. So you get your opponent to like maybe burn their best card. If they have the Joker, you can get rid of it. If you have like a high Oracle card, you can get rid of it. Or Omen card, you can get rid of it. Dangerous Medicine. This one's campaign only. At the end of the first Omen phase, if this Omen is not a court card, you can ignore its all afflictions of the equipped model for the duration of the game. Basically, he just like takes his leeches and cocaine. A stool helps you reach high shelves at the head of bigger enemies. When the equipped model attacks an enemy Goliath, before the attack's resolved, you can discard the stool. If you do, the equipped model can place 2 cards face down to fight them. A Rusty Nail. If you do, take the first card of the deck and place it in the equipped model's damage zone. So basically, you discard the Rusty Nail. Why would you even use that is the question. You can just damage yourself for free. Tuna. Blood-written Vow. When the equipped model is slain, you can discard the vow. If you do, place a card from the equipped model's damage zone into your hand before the model is removed from the board. So basically, if you have like a really dangerous card in their damage zone, you can cycle it into your hand with the vow. Just neat little items like this. They're all really thematic. Barbed Nets. The equipped model can use a use item action to prevent enemy model from making a move or dash within short. And then you get your purchase table. More background. Again, a really cool piece of art with the jellyfish there. And 7 scenarios. The Sunken Bell, the Bone Oracle, Parasite's Call, a Crab's Dinner, the Scavenger Flock, Gifts of the Tide, and the Snail Stones. So start the game. Before the scenario starts, players use the setup, choose player colors, set up terrain, and then an optional beta rule. Each player can place a piece of scatter terrain that they can be placed on the board from the black player. This terrain cannot be placed on top of objectives or tokens. So basically, like you'd get like a free piece you can place. Every player draws 5 cards, and then you deploy following the instructions for the scenario. So I'm going to go through the Sunken Bell so you can see an example, and you guys can check out the rest yourselves. So you can see there's a bell in the middle of the table. It's a central objective one. Half buried in the shifting sands, the rusted bell of the downed monastery waits. Its metal is covered in bas-reliefs representing terrible sea monsters and broken ships. Some say its toll will call forth salvation, while others fear it will wake something that should remain forgotten. The sea watches, the tide listens. Who will claim the final chime? So you have a bell. This is one of those games that encourages you to have cool modeling stuff. So like model a bell. It's easy to do. It lasts 5 rounds, so when 5 omens have been dealt out, then the game's over. And then deploy. Place the bell in the center of the board. It is a terrain and at least a diameter of short. Start with a black player. Players alternate deploying models within short of their board edge until all models are deployed. And then ring the bell. A model in base contact with the bell can interact and discard the current omen and draw a new one. Then push back all models in base contact with the bell, then match the new Omen's color. So basically, like if the black player flips red, all the red models get pushed back. And then winning and scoring points for whom the bell tolls. At the end of every round, the player who has the highest amount of models in base contact with the bell, excluding models in base contact with enemies, gain the points. And the amount of points is based on the number of models. So in the first round, 1 point, and the second round, in the third and fourth, it's 2 points, and in the round 5, it's 3 points, trying to control this objective. This is a really clever objective. It's basically like a circular scoring zone, like in 40K. But because you interact with it and bang the bell, and there's so many ways to manipulate cards and the deck and stuff like that in certain factions, it's a really clever way of like having a central scoring zone, which would seem boring normally. But this giant gong going off, pushing people back, is a compelling narrative way of having an objective. So it both works as like a cool objective, but also fits the theme of the game. And then Impending Doom at the end of the game, check the Omen zone. If there are more red cards than black, the red player gains 2. If there's more black than red, the black player gains 2. So again, a reason to manipulate the deck to get the scoring zone right. Highest total wins, and if tied, the player's color matches the last drawn Omen is the winner. So a bunch of ways to win the game. Really clever scenario design here, and it fits the theme. And so more of these: a Bone Oracle, Parasite's Call, there's a carcass in the middle of the table, a Crab's Dinner, and this one's got random sort of stargazing crabs. When the Omen's revealed, regular numbered cards, you spawn a crab, spawn 2 crabs. Players can move a crab that hasn't been activated yet by short in any direction. Crabs are in base contact. A crab is killed if it takes 1 damage. When defending a crab, always draws the top card of the deck. Every time a model slays a crab, they get a crab trophy. And then winning and scoring points at the end of the game. Players gain 1 point for every crab trophy they have. Not crab, but still tasty. Players gain 1 model for every enemy model slain. And the highest one wins. Scavenging Flock. And Gifts of the Tides. Another great piece. That's a very Omen Tide Mordheim piece of art right there, and I love it. That's great. And the Snail Stones. And that's it. That's our game. Some thanks in here. You can see Pawl Boracchi and Simon Schnitzler, I think is how it's pronounced, did all the art, and congratulations to them because it looks fantastic. And then some thanks to the world building and writing to Paul and Simon. So yeah, what a great little free game. 3 models is not a big ask. This is one of those games where if you want your friends to play it with you, I imagine if you just did both sides, just painted up 6 models and taught them how to play, the classes, unless you're doing abominations that are bigger, the classes you can kind of have any weirdo cultist for any weirdo cultist, just themed into whatever the cabal is. This would be a really easy like weekend game to just like convince non-miniature wargamers to play too. Because again, the deck of cards game mechanic is really easy to understand and isn't intimidating. So if you have friends, like this is the kind of game that you're going to see getting played probably in Grimdark Alley at Adepticon. In fact, this is the kind of game I might take to Adepticon to play in Grimdark Alley because like I feel like it would be the easiest to transport and do. Your non-gaming friends are probably way more receptive to a game like this because they will intrinsically understand a deck of cards, and 3 models is not a big ask. And then the weirdo-ness of the scenarios and the small play area makes it real easy to like throw down and play. So if you liked games like Demonship, 1490 Doom, and you like that grim dark kind of like theme and easy to set up and tear down sort of like stuff, or you're just like one of those diorama painters that wants to make something cool, you could reskin this to like Chaos Cults in 40K. I might do the Thing. Like there's a bunch of different ways you could reskin this. It'd be really fun and really easy and just do like a cool like collection of terrain with. So there it is, another indie hour done, and we have checked out Omen Tide. So if you're watching this live on YouTube, we'll be recording the next one of these with the Patreon. The GMG patrons, they will select and pick the games as well as nominate them for being included in this series. And we'll be doing a little hangout afterwards. We do a little bit of like hang before and after chat and see what everybody's doing. Between games. So big thanks for watching. We'll be back with another indie hour next week. Till then, I'm Ash.